Hey everybody, JR from JR's Cars here. Today we're going to be working back on the 2007 Pontiac Torrent. I know everybody's going in a frenzy about this whole coronavirus and, self-quarantine, everything else, but you know what? You can't forget your cars either. They need maintenance just as well as you do. So today we're basically just going to do some routine maintenance, oil change, check out all the fluids, and we're going to replace the wiper blades on this here too. I replaced the rear one already, so it's time to replace those front ones. When changing oil, if you ask 50 people an opinion, you'll get 50 different answers on what kind of oils, what kind of filters, everything else that you need for your car. Honestly, this is what I end up using for any of my cars that have over 100,000 miles. It's just a regular old Walmart SuperTech brand oil, regular dyno oil, nothing special. One thing I definitely suggest is not skimping out on the oil filter you use. For my GMs, I use AC Delcos. For my Fords that I've had in the past, I definitely use a Motorcraft. If I can't find the manufacturer-specific filter, I will usually end up with like a Purolator or an STP, like a higher-end filter. Definitely don't skip out, because you can look on the internet anywhere and find information on people opening up the cans and taking a look at the filter media in there, and there is a huge difference in the bottom bargain ones like Frams, like their lower end line, as opposed to a higher end like an AC Delco, a Motorcraft, or you get into ones like Royal Purple and things like that. So if you're interested in that, you could definitely look that up and find that anywhere on the internet. So what you're also going to need is your drain pan, obviously. Oil's got to go somewhere, right? What I also would highly suggest is, if you're going to be one to do your own maintenance, I would definitely suggest getting a pair of ramps. It's going to definitely make your life easier when getting underneath your car to do routine oil changes and little things like that. But it's also for a safety factor too. It's definitely safer for you to be on a ramp than to have a jack underneath the car. There's always a possibility that a jack could fail. You should have jack stands underneath the car too, just to prevent that from happening. But if you're one of those people that don't go out and get those things, then it's always a possibility of a jack possibly failing and coming down on you, which is absolutely not a good thing, and you want to prevent that at any cost. All right, so now you see we're up on the ramps here, and we got more than enough room to do what we need to do. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you're either up on the ramp, or if you have the jack underneath the car with the jack stands, you want to make sure that you pull that e-brake and that you're chalking up the rear tires, so that way it will prevent anything from happening and that car rolling anywhere. Safety first. You have to make sure that you're safe. So now that we're ready to get started here, usually what I like to do is I like to get the car just a little bit warm. I'll run it for maybe 3 to 4 minutes just to start getting the oil a little bit warm. That way it'll flow out a little bit better, as opposed to when it's cold. When it's cold, oil's a little thicker. So if you run it a little bit before you go to change the oil, not a lot, don't run it to the point to where the oil's really hot to where you can't handle it. But you want to make sure that at least it's a little bit warm, so when you crack open the drain on the bottom, that most of the oil is going to flow out of it. Okay, now that we're underneath the car, I can actually see where a lot of these little oil drips have been leaving marks in the driveway. I can see my oil filter is dripping a little oil here, so it's probably not spun on good. And my oil pan is definitely seeping a little bit, but that's something that I'll eventually address with it. So what you want to do is you want to take a look at your oil pan. Find your drain plug, which is right here. You're going to grab your socket, you're going to crack it open. But when you crack it open, make sure that you have your pan underneath it. And make sure that it's back far enough, because when this comes out, it's going to come out in a stream towards the rear of the car. It's not going to come straight down the way that you would think it might. It's going to come out like this at first. Then what will happen is, as there's less oil to drain out, it's going to start draining down straight, so you're going to have to end up moving your pan. So you should always watch this. All right, so here we go. I cracked it loose, and we'll get this out of here. comes. So you're going to let this drain out and just keep an eye on the pan to make sure that it's actually going in the pan. Now that you have the drain plug out, you're definitely going to want to inspect it. This one here, you can see the little black rubber in there. That's the seal for it. You want to make sure it's in good shape and it's not torn anywhere and everything looks good, which this one definitely does. You clean it off and everything will be good to go. Now there's other ones, there's other cars where they'll have a Teflon seal in it. Some may even have a copper crush washer. Whatever the sealing method is on your drain plug here, you just want to make sure that that's in good working order, because if you don't have that in good working order, you're going to end up getting leaks and you'll end up wondering where your oil's going in your nice fresh oil change here. Don't forget to keep an eye on your drain pan. Now that we're waiting for that to finish up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start prepping the oil filter. So if you take a look at the oil filter, you can see right here, this big white area. I like to mark the mileage on the car on that white area, because in that way I'll know when this oil filter was last changed. Done. Alright, so another thing you're going to want to do to prevent a dry startup is to fill up the oil filter here. You want to make sure that you're filling up. If you open this, if you get in here, you can fill this up, get it to almost the top, and then wait a second, because what it's going to do is it's going to go throughout the whole filter media, and eventually what it's going to do is you're going to need more of it. So taking it and kind of spinning it around a little bit will help just get all that oil in the filter media. And then we'll set it back down and we'll fill it all the way up again. In addition to that, you want to take your finger, you want to get a little bit of oil on your finger here, and you want to make sure that the seal is fully oiled, because this is what's going to mate up against the engine. You want to make sure that that is going to spin on there freely and it's not going to bind up on you. And now that we're pretty much down to just a drip, what I like to do is I like to get in there, give this a quick wipe just to clean up that surface there. And we'll take our drain plug, put it back in. All right, we'll tighten that back down. Then we're gonna get to the oil filter. All right, I cleaned it up a little bit here so it's a little easier to grab a hold of. What you want to make sure that you do is you get your drain pan underneath it, because you're gonna get a lot of oil coming out of here. Go ahead and grab that, that's good. Grab the filter. It should be just about hand tight. There we go. And there she is. So I would let that drain out a little bit just to get that oil out of the way. And then what you're going to want to do is get in here with your rag and clean the mating surface here too, to make sure you have a nice clean area, so that when you put your new oil filter on here, it seats up well and won't leak on you. Every manufacturer is a little bit different in the way that they have their filters oriented on the engines. Some go in straight up and down, some will go in sideways, some will go in on an angle. What you want to make sure that when you take this filter off, that you're getting that seal along with it. I've had many a times with some of the Fords that I have when I use the Motorcraft filters, where that seal doesn't come off and it actually stays up on that engine. So if you spin this on, it has two gaskets on it, you're gonna leak really, really bad. If you're ever wondering what kind of oil to use in your car, usually it'll show you on top of the oil cap here, but sometimes this will wear off. If this wears off and it doesn't show you what kind of oil you need to use, you can always go into your owner's manual, go into your maintenance section here, if the wind would cooperate with me, and it'll tell you right here what kind of oil you need to use. Alright, so now that you make sure that everything is tightened up down below, you have the drain plug in, you have the oil filter hand tight, it's oil time. Alright, so now we're going to give it a start here. And one thing you might notice when you go to start your car up for the first time after an oil change, and it's okay, don't worry about it, is you may hear a little bit of tapping, you may hear some ticking, because all the oil that's in the engine was drained out and down out of the pan. So what it has to do is it has to build up pressure through the oil pump, and then all that's going to go through the engine. So you might hear ticking for maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds or so. That's completely normal, don't worry about it. So we'll go around, and then we'll get underneath it, and we'll make sure that we're not leaking anything here. That's good. Not dripping anything. So that job is complete. Now that everything is done and we checked to make sure that there's no leaks, you want to get the car back down on solid ground. So it's either taking it off your ramps here or getting it off the jack and the jack stands. Make sure it's on level ground, and then we'll double check the oil after about 5 minutes just to make sure that all the oil goes back down into the pan and we can get an accurate level. I've already checked this, so we're good here. We're going to check on a couple other maintenance items. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to reset the oil change interval. Most newer cars now have a default of 5,000-7,000 miles, somewhere around that, of oil change interval built into the car. So when you change your oil, you have to reset that oil life, and this is how you do it on the Pontiac Torrent. So you go over to here, you're going to hit this button here, which gives you vehicle information. And then it'll get to the oil life remaining. You're going to go back over here, and you're going to hold the check button down. That's going to reset your oil life to 100%. Now you're good to go. So like I said before, what we're going to do is we're just going to double check typical maintenance items, fluids, things like that. You've already changed the oil, so might as well take a look at everything else you have in here too to make sure everything's in good working order. The first thing I like to take a look at, obviously, because it very much helps to be able to see, is your washer fluid. Open up, take a look and see what you have in there. And we definitely need some more. You could probably see on the side. On the Torrent, it's a little bit hard to see because we have the battery box here in the way, so you really can't see. You have to look inside it. I'm going to have to add some more there. And while we're at it, we'll take a look at the coolant. Coolant level on the side looks to be pretty good. We can open this up here and take a look. You have to make sure that your engine is cold when you're doing this, because if your engine is warm, you're probably going to spray antifreeze all over the place. Alright, so we'll take a look, and everything looks to be good there. Put that back on and tighten it down. Another item to take a look at is your brake fluid. You want to make sure that it's filled up. Right, you have a minimum and you have your maximum. It looks like it's good. A little dirty under this hood, but that's okay. You're definitely good. Fluid itself looks pretty good. Eventually in the future that should be changed, but everything looks good there. Alright, put that back on there, make sure it's snug, which leads you to the transmission. Now, some cars don't have transmission dipsticks. This one, if you're looking at the top, you're not going to see it anywhere. I'll show you where it is right here. One thing that I really don't understand that Pontiac did with this is when we're looking at maintenance, we're trying to make sure that all the fluids are filled, right? So one of the things that you have to check is your transmission fluid. I don't get why they buried it all the way down here. This is your engine mount right here underneath the car. The dipstick for the transmission is right there. There's a screw that holds that in place. As you can see, it's quite rusty there, that red rusted piece in the middle there. And that's your dipstick. So if you want to check your transmission fluid, good luck, because I mean, I really can't get my fingers in here at all. I'm just barely touching it to be able to take this out and check your transmission fluid. Good job there, Pontiac. Newer cars like my wife's Hyundai Sonata doesn't have a transmission dipstick. Technically, it's not a serviceable unit, which I don't get. It's not really optimal for me because I like being able to change the fluids and make sure that everything is nice and new and we can get some more service out of it. But if you want to check that car out, why don't you take a look below here, and that's a link to the car, the review that I did on that one. Alright, so like I said before, we're also going to replace the wipers on the car because they're pretty much useless at this point and they definitely need a replacement. So like most new cars now, you're going to get two different size wipers. On the Pontiac Torrent, you have the passenger side, which is a 19-inch, the driver side, which is a 24-inch, and then the one on the tailgate, which is a 15-inch. So we'll get those changed out, and then we're set and ready to go for another 5,000 miles. Alright everybody, I hope this video helped you out and showed you how easy it is to be able to do just some routine maintenance items on your own car. Why spend all that money and have someone else do it when you could do it for about a third of the price? So do me a favor, if you like this kind of content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with your friends. And I'll catch you in the next video. But before we end, I want you all to be safe and make sure that you